Hello, this is John Stafford. I'm sitting here with local real estate expert Greg Blatt with Keller Williams, and I'm here to get the real story as far as what's going on with real estate values and this levy. So I thought I would ask one of Greene County's top real estate experts what the true story is versus what the school board in Allerton Hill is putting out as far as real estate values. So Greg, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, thanks for the opportunity, John. I've been a real estate agent, broker in the Dayton community, specifically Greene County, for the last 18 years. Actually, I've been licensed since 1979, and my entire career has been right around the south part of Dayton. So Centerville, Kettering, Bellbrook, Sugar Creek Township, Beaver Creek, those areas. We service all of those. So 40 years, I hate to say that. I know it was 5 when I started.
We're all getting old.
I know, right? So, 40 years of residential and commercial real estate. And I think we've got a pretty good handle on market trends and what takes place in the real estate market as economies ebb and flow.
What do you think is going to happen, or what's the side effect, either positive, because the school's contention is if the levy is not passed, home values are going to go down, whereas our contention is if this levy is passed, it's going to affect negatively the home values. What's your opinion on that?
Well, if you think about how people buy homes or buy a car or buy anything for that matter, people buy based on what they can afford. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Okay. So if I have an income of, let's say, $80,000 a year, to qualify for a mortgage, you're generally going to put anywhere from 5% down to 10% down to 20% down. So you have to have that cash up front. So, maybe somewhere from $5,000 up to $30,000 or more. So you have to have that in the bank. But people buy based on their monthly payment. They buy based on what they can afford in their budget.
Right.
Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So there's 4 components that make up a mortgage payment. There's the principal amount. That's the amount that you borrow, and that's the amount that you have to pay down over a 30-year period.
Right.
There's the interest that you're going to pay. That's what the mortgage bank charges you for the use of their money. And so as interest rates rise, the amount of principal you can borrow decreases because it's based on your qualifying income. Does that make sense?
Correct.
Okay. So a mortgage lender would say generally 28% of your income should be allocated to housing, and no more than that. And then if you have a car payment or debt or anything like that, that gets added to your overall debt to income ratio, and they don't like that to go above 40% total. So that's credit cards, that's car payment, student loans, and housing.
Right.
Okay. So if we make it simple and just look at, say, a 28% ratio, debt to income ratio based on housing, that means your principal payment, your interest payment, your tax payment, which is part of that, and your insurance payment cannot exceed 28% of your gross income.
Okay.
Make sense so far? So people kind of have a ceiling of what they can afford, right?
Right.
Okay. So based on that, affordability of housing is impacted by either the interest rate, positive or negative, because we all know rates go up or they go down, okay? Insurance, which generally that's going to stay pretty stable, or if anything, go up, right?
Right.
And taxes. And taxes
taxes
generally go
one.
where? Up or down?
They always go up.
They always go up. So as taxes go up, what happens to that principal amount? It has to come down, doesn't it?
Yes.
So when we talk about affordability and what people can afford to buy, as taxes go up or interest rates, then that's going to reduce the amount of principal that a person can afford. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So one of two things either have to happen. Either they have to come with a greater down payment, which means they have to save more,
Right.
or they have to be able to borrow more, which means they have to have more qualifying income to qualify for that payment.
Okay.
So how do taxes impact the affordability of housing when we're talking about a school levy or an income tax or a reapportionment or a reassessment of our home values? As taxes go up, the principal amount has to come down.
I see.
So if you're going to sell your house, John,
Right.
and somebody that has, say, an $80,000 income, for every percent increase in those taxes, there's going to be an offsetting decrease in principal amount. So as I looked at this levy, I'm thinking, okay, what's the percentage increase? The proposed levy, if I did my math correctly, is about an 8.34% increase on the current tax assessments right now.
Okay.
Now that's not the assessed value, that's the actual taxes against the assessed value.
Okay.
So if you had taxes of say $6,000 a year, the levy would add about $557 to that,
Right.
or $47 a month.
Right.
Okay, so that's going to decrease the amount of principal that you can borrow. In math terms, that means you have to have about a 3% increase in income to afford that increase in taxes.
So
to buy the same price.
So what you're telling me is it's going to have a negative effect on either people coming in, buying into our community because our taxes are so high, which may cause them to look into other communities with a tax that's not as high,
Right.
or it's just going to make it near impossible to try to recoup the money that you've got into it because there's less buyers in the market. So it's a
Could be less
negative.
buyers. Yeah, could be less buyers because of affordability.
So
So if I can't afford to buy in Centerville, as an example,
right?
I might have to look to, say, Miamisburg or Franklin, or I might
Okay.
have to go to Lebanon. Okay.
So
Same thing.
so is the contention that that the school board is their position that the levy has to be passed or the values are going to go down? Is that correct or is it incorrect? Because we think it's incorrect.
Well, if you take the formula, and again,
Right.
just pure math, it would tell you that as taxes go up, the principal amount's going to come down. It's going to have a negative effect on affordability.
There you
It just
go.
has to be. It
See,
just has to
we're
be.
all about the facts, and we find that the numbers don't lie. Now, you mentioned Centerville, but also Beaver Creek. They've both passed huge and unbelievable property tax increases for their schools. What are you hearing right now as far as the impact on home sales or buyers into those communities?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Number one, we're kind of in an interesting market because we have a very low inventory. So supply and demand. So fewer
Right.
supply, higher demand, prices generally go up. What's interesting is we're seeing prices are actually flat or coming down slightly. In fact, I looked at the Sugar Creek.
Let's see the
Township.
graph that you have there.
Okay.
That graph is kind of interesting.
Yeah. So I ran Sugar Creek Local School District, and this is a graph that I put together of all of the sales from January 2018 through December 2019. And I can give you a copy of this. You can post
Sure.
it.
What I'll do is for all those that are watching the video, we're going to post this graph separately online so that you've got a better understanding of what it's saying.
Yeah. So if you look at 2018, January 2018, our trend line was actually fairly flat through here.
Right.
Okay? We didn't see any real appreciation, but we didn't see any real depreciation either. Then we come into the first quarter of 2019, we had a spike with the spring market, but then after May, if you look here, May and April, August, everything started to trend downward. So when I ran the numbers January 2019 through December 2019,
Right.
statistically, the median sale price went down 18.45% in 2019, January to December, and the average sale price in Sugar Creek Local School District went down 13.03%.
And
Now,
what do you attribute that I mean, actually it's a staggering decrease. What do you
It's substantial.
well, yeah, my banker would say if I presented that in my business as trouble, but what do you attribute that to?
Well, you know, can we definitely say it's attributable to the tax levy that failed? I don't know. I mean, I can't say that definitively. But if you look at the trend line, 2018 was flat. 2019 dropped substantially. Did all of the publicity and so forth surrounding the last failed levy have an impact on people looking in our community? I don't know. I mean, the numbers are suggesting that prices have come down. So draw your own conclusions.
Could it be that people that are looking in various communities are realizing that Bellbrook Sugar Creek is in the top 13% of not just Greene County, but in the country.
Yeah.
And that high value or the high real estate property taxes are making people shy away from buying into Bellbrook Sugar Creek, regardless of how much the school system pounds that drum that we have great schools, so you should come and move here.
Right. Again, it goes back to affordability.
Right.
Okay? People have a fixed budget that they can qualify for the mortgages with.
Right.
They have a fixed income. They don't get to arbitrarily raise their income to meet a higher demand just because they want to move into a particular area. So they're looking at other areas. I hear it all the time. Taxes are too high. Even from people coming out from out of state are looking at our area,
Right.
and they're choosing to go to Lebanon and places in Warren County because the taxes are much less than they are in Greene or Montgomery County.
And we're hearing the same thing. Now, how do you think this is affecting the senior citizens within our community that have been longtime residents and supporters of Bellbrook, Sugar Creek, the schools? They were here before anybody else. And then also the young families that have moved here on a tight budget, a limited budget, and now they have these unplanned property taxes they never expected to have to deal with. And so in their family, to give the schools the money that the schools want, their family is actually going to have to do with less. Mm-hmm. What are you hearing about that? And what's your feelings about that?
What we're hearing is people wanting to put their homes on the market and sell because they can no longer afford the payments. And, a lot of those folks, they're on fixed income, right?
Right.
They're stuck on Social Security or, whatever they've got, any investment income that they might have, but it's fixed. It doesn't go up because their earning potential isn't there.
It's a negative, and we agree on that.
So the challenge you've got is, even though most of their homes are paid in full, they still have the tax burden. If you're making $1,100 or $1,200 or $1,500 a month on Social Security income, well, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say it's $2,000 a month. A tax increase of any kind, whether it's schools or reassessment of tax values based on the reappraisals, it's having a negative effect on them. They can no longer afford to stay in those homes. They have to sell them in order to live within their means of a limited income.
See, I'm part of the people that are on the Vote Yes PAC and support the school levy. That's exactly what they want to have happen. They want the old people to move out, and they've pretty much said that. Now, the last question I want to ask you, what's your opinion as an expert within this field of real estate? Right now, currently, the schools need a levy in 2020. They are going to need another levy based upon their own forecast in 2024 for 2025 season, because they're going to be bankrupt again. And then when you extrapolate the numbers out, they are going to be bankrupt once again 2029 and need a levy for 2030. But the other thing that is really disturbing is that the Vote Yes PAC is telling everybody that we as a community should be expecting a levy every few years for the next 40 years. What's your feeling on that? That we're talking about over the next less than 10 years, the property taxes are going to go up $600 per $100,000 of your value.
Well, if you look at the average sale price of $278,000 in the district, $600 per $100,000, that's another $1,200 a year. Again, you're going to have a 6 to 10% increase in your income. So I guess the question would be is, what do you think your prospects are in getting a 6 to 10% increase in your income to afford that offset?
Well, see, most people are going to say they're not. They can't. And the only people in our community that are getting those kind of raises are the administration and the teachers within our school district. So I want to thank you, Greg, for your time. I think that whether you're on the Vote Yes side or you're a Vote No supporter, I think everybody needs to hear the truth and the facts. And I appreciate you presenting those in an unbiased interview.
Well, all I would ask is, and I would say this, John, I'm all in favor of good schools. I mean, I don't think there's anybody out there that would say we want lousy schools in our community. We don't.
I agree with you 100% on
We absolutely
that.
want great schools. What I will tell you is there has to be a balance between what people can afford. There's a tipping point, right, of what people can afford and what they can't afford. And then you have to look at fiscal responsibility, just like every homeowner has to look at their budgets. I think schools have to look at theirs too. And, I haven't seen the school budget, so I don't know how they're doing. in terms of watching their expenses and cutting expenses. But I have to do it in my home. There's things I have to do without many times. Even though I want them desperately, but I have to do without it because there's only so much income coming in. So I either have to work more hours or I have to find another source of income.
Well, I think that almost everyone in our community would agree with what you're saying. And I think that being fiscally responsible is something this school board has not been able to do, and they've proved it by the actions they've taken. And probably the best evidence is the school's bankrupt. So,
well, it's pretty sad. But as far as housing values, just to wrap up, I would say, look at the numbers, check out the chart. Those are real statistics from real sales, 232 sales in the school district in 2019. So we're not picking one or two properties and saying that's our data source. There's 232 data points to draw from that gave us those averages and those medians. So there's some real numbers behind that.
well, I want to thank you for your research and your time.
Sure.
We'll be posting the video tonight. If anybody has any questions for Greg that you would like to have answered, just private message me those on the Facebook site, and I'll forward those to Greg, and he'll be happy to answer them.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. You bet.